Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today me and Josh from the other channel, Just Because Racing, we are going up to Michigan to pick up a trans for the build. I had originally planned on using the T45, but I found a deal on a T56 out of an 04 Cobra that I think we're going to use. So stick with us and we're going to go there. Alright guys, it's the next day. I didn't take you guys along on the actual buying process. We got in pretty late, we had to stay the night up there, and then when we woke up in the morning we were pretty tired. I didn't feel like asking the guy if he wanted to be on camera. Figured we'd just keep his identity disclosed to himself. But it's also a little bit more boring. I just wanted to get straight to it, show you guys what we got, and explain it. It'll be a little bit more interesting than just seeing us buy it. But yeah, let's get to it. Alright guys, so this is the transmission we'll be using on the Coyote swap build. It is a T56 from an 04 Cobra. It had 14,000 miles when it was pulled. The guy just pulled it because he's going with a 2.9 liter Whipple and converting the car to E85. So he's going to be making around that like 750 horsepower range, and he didn't want to risk breaking this. I've seen online guys making around 700 horsepower and the Terminator Cobras with stock T56s, but whether or not they're actually just dyno queens, who knows. But for us, what we'll be using it for, it should be plenty, especially when we're just naturally aspirated. If we ever go boosted, we will be pushing it, but I think it'll be fine for a little while at least. Maybe eventually we'll have to go to a T56 Magnum, or we'll just upgrade the internal parts of this. We'll see at that point. But it did come with a Hurst shifter, which we needed. I sold the old shifter for the car, which is a Pro 50 shifter, a short throw shifter, but the throw on it was just too short. I guess more or less the reach on it was too short for the car. I don't know if anybody's ever really been in SN95 cars, but the reach from the driver's seat all the way up to, it doesn't seem like much, but reaching all the way up there, it had just basically the shift knob straight off of it, and it was super short. So it wasn't very good for, this body style car. Those Pro 50 shifters are a little bit better for like Fox bodies, but we'll be able to, it didn't come with the handle or the, iconic Hurst 8-ball shifter, the shift knob. We'll have to order those, but that we did need. It didn't come with a bell housing, which sucks because the QuickTime bell housing is about 750 bucks, and I haven't been able to find any other bell housings online other than the QuickTime ones. I did find some on like Facebook Marketplace that were, a little bit cheaper, somewhere between $400 and $600. But we might be going with something like that if we can't find a good deal on a belt housing for it from an 03 or 04 Cobra, because that's the only ones that'll work with what we need, at least for a stock belt housing. If we can't find one of those, we'll have to go with the QuickTime one, because that seems to be the only aftermarket manufacturer that makes one for these. But we might have to do that. It did come with a flywheel and the stock clutch that came out of the car. It's in okay shape, but I'm not sure that we're going to be reusing it. We will reuse this. I might have it turned. We'll see. There's something I was going to say. Oh yeah, the reason we might not reuse that clutch that came out of the stock car is because this has a 10 spline input shaft. We may be upgrading to the 26 spline input shaft. It's a little bit stronger. It's pretty easy to replace. You pretty much just have to take this front cover off, which is a few bolts in here, pull this off, put in the new one. It's pretty simple, easy install, and it makes this thing a lot stronger. And if we do that, we'll obviously have to upgrade the clutch. This is a 10 spline clutch, so we'll have to upgrade it to a 26 spline if we do that. I'm not sure if we'll do it yet. We'll see as we get closer. It's going to be a while before we put a clutch and flywheel and everything onto this. And around that time is when I'll decide whether or not I'm going to do the input shaft on this. But yeah, that's the transmission. Now, for those of you who don't know, the T56 is a 6-speed. The car was a 5-speed, so we're going to be gaining an extra gear. I did the ratio online with a calculator, and we should be dropping RPM at about highway speeds by about like 250 to 300 RPM, which this car has 410 gear, so that'll be really nice. We won't have as high of an idle on the highway, not as much of a drone, especially since we're going to be doing that long road trip. I don't want to have to listen to a loud Coyote for hours on end. It'd be nice if we could get, you know, a little bit more RPM drop on the highway. So that'll be really nice, converting it to that 6-speed. And then also a T56, for those who don't know, is a lot stronger than the T45 that came in these cars. Now, if you guys have a T45 laying around or a TR3650, you can absolutely use those. I had planned on using the T45 to go on the Coyote to save a little bit of money and just get the thing on the road. And that's perfectly fine if that's what you guys want to do. But if you can find a deal on a T56, I would go with that. It is a very good transmission. It's a lot stronger, and you gain that extra gear. But the T45 is not a bad option. It's up for debate on whether or not the T45 will last a really long time. People say that they're not very strong transmissions, and for sure they don't have a lot of aftermarket to be able to upgrade them. But this car, and I have the dyno video on the first video, so if you guys want to see, you can check it out. I didn't put the numbers in there, but the car made 398 horsepower, like wheel horsepower, and 423 foot-pounds of torque. So it had close to Coyote numbers. You know, I know with bolt-ons, if you have a Mustang Coyote, it can be, 420 to 450. 450 is a little bit high unless you're running like E85, but it is more power than that 398 horsepower. The car was pro-charged. That's how we got to that number. But it held up fine with this amount of power. So I would think that it would be fine behind a Coyote for a little while. Now, if you're throwing slicks on it and you're taking to a sticky track, it might not hold up for very long, especially if you guys aren't launching it very nicely. You're just dumping the clutch at, 3,000 to 4,000 RPMs. You're going to start breaking stuff, and that T45 is probably going to be the first thing to break. So if you guys are going to be really hard on it, I suggest going with T56. If this thing's just going to be a reliable cruiser and you're doing like an F-150 engine, it'll be perfect to just throw the T45 in there, especially if it's in good condition, or the TR3650. Now, I would even argue that using your T45 or TR3650 is better than using the MT82 that came out of the newer Mustangs. I know that the T45 is probably not as strong, and the TR3650 is probably not as strong, but the MT82 isn't a very good transmission. They've had plenty of issues. They don't hold a lot of power. Granted, they hold a little bit more power probably than T45 and TR3650, but the amount of work that it's going to take for you to get it to work in the new Edge car or just an SA95 in general, to me, it's not worth it. If you have a T45, I would just throw it in there. It's a plug and play. solution. Whereas the MT82, you're gonna have to, you know, convert your drive shaft, you're gonna have to figure out mounting, you're gonna have to figure out a remote shifter. It's just, to me, not worth it. T45 isn't a great transmission, but it'll just bolt right in there and it'll handle what you need to for, you know, a little while at least. And if you're just cruising around, it'll be fine. And then again, if you want to run a lot of power and you really want to beat on it, try and find something like a T56, or go automatic, which isn't that great. But if that's what you're into, go for it. And the only reason that I bring up the MT82 is because I know that they come in a lot of packages with Coyotes. You can find them online together, full drivetrain pull from a newer Mustang. That's the only reason why I even bring them up, because some people do look into it to try and put an MT82 in these, but to me, it's garbage. Don't do it. I would rather have a T45 just for the plug and play, ease of install. And if not, I'd try and find something like a T56 again. Now with the T56, we will need to either convert this drive shaft to work with it, or I'll have to buy a new drive shaft from an 0304 Cobra. The output shaft spline count for the yoke is different on the T56 than it was on the T45. I believe the T45 was a 31 spline, and I'm honestly not sure on the T56, but I'll put the number up here. But it's different, I know that much. So we're gonna have to either convert this one. This is a Ford Performance aluminum drive shaft, so I'm not sure if I wanna, you know, it's not hard to just change that yoke out, but I don't think that the length is correct for this car. I think the 0304 Cobras were a little bit shorter, had a little bit of a shorter drive shaft, not the car itself. The car was the same size, but this was a little bit of a longer transmission, has an extra gear in it, makes sense. So this was shorter on the 0304 Cobras. So I haven't decided. We'll either cut this one up or we'll just buy a drive shaft out of an 0304 Cobra and throw it in there. But that's what we'll be doing with that. All right, guys, Josh also went along with us. He picked up an engine for his build. So if you want to see what it is, what he's going to be doing with that, check out his channel at Just Because Racing. And if you guys want to see this Coyote and a T56 6-speed get swapped into this new Edge, and you like this content, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.